in this next activity, activity 43, I'm going to bring in a passage from Frederick Bastiat. Bastiat is a French political economist in the liberal tradition, meaning the traditional classical liberal tradition, and he's making some points here about economics, but primarily personal responsibility and morality that fit very well into this conversation. So I want to bring in what he has to say also. So he begins by being an economist by talking about economics, and he says that in the economic sphere, if government does something, it will have a series of effects, and if the government does something that has an immediate good or positive effect, it's very possible that it would have a negative consequence resulting from it that's disastrous, or government may do something or abstain from doing something that might have a short-term difficult time to go through, but would lead to really good consequences like economic recovery, for example, in the future. And that for him, in letter B, he's saying, a good economist is the one who understands not only short-term consequences but long-term consequences, and will recommend policies that will ultimately lead to something good, even if it requires a little bit of hardship in the short term. So I'm going to bring in to this conversation, or this lecture, a new geometric shape, what I'm going to call the flying V, and it's going to have to do with choices that people make, either on an individual basis or as a government. And just going to make the point that if you choose something that feels good in the short term, or is easy in the short term, then it may have disastrous long-term consequences. We're gonna call these wrong actions. Wrong actions, wrong choices have this feature of doing something in the short term that feels good, but in the long term have something negative that outweighs the benefit you received in the short term. Whereas good choices or right choices are ones that may be difficult in the short term but have desirable or good consequences. Now you can see in letter C that he brings us down to the individual level. I'm just going to give some really kind of innocent, easy examples to understand. The reason why people say you should not drink excessively, for example, drink alcohol, is because it's fun, it feels good while you're doing it, you're having a great party, a great time. But at the very least, if you drink heavily, you're going to have a bad hangover the next day and feel sick. Or, even worst case scenario, you get into a drunken driving accident and you get killed, you hurt somebody fatally, etc. So smoking is something that feels good while you're doing it, but you end up dying of lung cancer. As we saw in the previous activity, tastes really good to have Mountain Dew and a bag of chips for breakfast, and it's really easy to just pop open that can and open the bag, but then you end up obese, and in those cases your babies die at a young age. Whereas it's harder to get up in the morning and make yourself a bowl of oatmeal. It doesn't maybe taste as good either, but it has the good consequence of you're in good shape, you're healthy, and your babies are healthy too. Or in the case of school, you're studying. It's hard, and you put work into your assignments, and that's hard and not pleasant, but the outcome is good, usually, that you get a good grade. Whereas if you don't put that work in, then you don't get as good a grade as a rule. And I'm not sure why reality works this way, but I just would encourage you to reflect on it, and I think you'll see lots of examples. And I just want to make it clear that we're not including things that happen to people just totally at random, like somebody could just walk out into the street one day and get hit by a car, and that's just, or some weird thing happens to somebody that's not related to any choice that they made. And there are things like that that happen in reality, but there's also many things that happen to us that are desirable or undesirable, that are the direct consequence of the choices that we make. And that's what we're focusing on, is the part of reality that's within our control.